Welcome in. It's football, guys. It's week 14. We have the whole gang back together. It's been a little while since we've all been able to get back together. We are going to run through the main slate here for DFS for DraftKings primarily. Maybe we'll hint at FanDuel a little bit as well. We'll run through your cash games, your GPP plays. We do stack of the week. We do discount plays. But without further ado, Devin, we missed you dearly. You were not here 2 weeks ago, and then we had Thanksgiving last week. How are you doing, Devin?
Good. In a new house and don't have any of my equipment. So if I sound worse, that's why. Although I'm sure the comment section will love that I'm sounding worse and don't have any lights and look like I'm in a dungeon. But that's all right. It's week 14, I think. I don't even know what week it is. I don't know what day it is. It's all just like a blur. But we're gonna try and have a good week.
Great to hear. And Phil, welcome. It's been good to see you after we had a Thanksgiving off last week. We want to roll in. What games are you watching here? And Devin's going to talk about having a good week, but I know there's some massive matchups in terms of divisional ranks and playoff implications. Doesn't seem like the point totals in any of those are too fantastic outside of maybe the Buffalo Cincinnati game. But what do you have your eyes on this week?
Yeah, I have my eyes on Devin's dungeon there. That looks like it smells of rich mahogany. Dude is in style in the new house. So, yeah, if someone could outfit my dungeon that way, I'd appreciate it. But yeah, getting to this slate, it's an interesting one, Jeff, because we had a lot of breakout performances in week 13 by some guys with some pretty thin resumes, and they look like they're popping up as pretty chalky this week. So something to think about as we move forward through these games is whether some of last week's performances, and Mitchell, are fragile moving forward, or if the conditions are there for those guys to repeat. But the games that I'm targeting, you mentioned Bengals, Bills. I think that's the one that everyone has circled. Bengals are on the road there. Bills favored by 5.5 at home, 53.5 point total. Joe Burrow is back. It's definitely got a little bit of a playoff atmosphere. Both teams are definitely in there looking for wins. So I could definitely see that game tilting high scoring, as Vegas implies. Other than that, Colts Jaguars looks okay, 47.5 point total. Colts have now lost 3 straight. Jaguars are hot. And that one could be one that goes over that number. I think I expect Jonathan Taylor to kind of get back in our good graces in that one. Then you've got Rams at
Maybe.
Cardinal.
Maybe.
Yeah, what's that?
Jacksonville's
Maybe.
defense has been their run defense. I just published our rushing matchups. I had them as the number one run defense in football. And like Devin Lloyd and Foyesade Alawakan, or however you say his name, might be the best linebacker duo in football. So it's always hard because schedules align and how they're, do you factor in strength of schedule? Do you factor in just results? And their results are as good as anybody, but their schedule is lacking a little bit. So this will be a big test for them.
Yeah, I just think Jonathan Taylor in a division matchup against like
Certainly.
any non-elite defense sounds pretty good to me. But yeah, from there we got heavy favorites. I mean, I do like the Rams Cardinals game for some points, but the Rams are pretty heavily favored there on the road by 8.5 total, and that one's 47.5. And then you got a bunch of teams that are projected to win in blowouts. Also, Seattle, Green Bay, Tampa Bay, all have team totals up over 25.5. I do actually kind of like that Tampa New Orleans game for both sides. Vegas only has that at 42.5, but I could definitely see that one going over. Tyler Shuck has looked serviceable.
Browns Titans seems like a good one.
I'm not going to laugh because week 1 you were throwing out these Steelers and they go for Steelers Jets and they go in a crazy game. But I think 33.5. Yeah, 33.5 I think is about the lowest total I've seen in a little while here this week. But
the last time I've seen one that was that low, it was the who was the running back? LaShawn McCoy, maybe in like 3 feet of snow.
The Blizzard game.
Yeah.
I was gonna
Was it in
say,
Buffalo?
yeah, it was Buffalo the Colts, I think.
Yeah. I think that was like
It's
29.
usually like a Maction game or like involves the University of Iowa when you see like the total that low. But
Iowa,
here we
Minnesota is always a good one, or Northwestern Iowa.
yes, I mean this might resemble an ugly, Big Ten West matchup here between these two teams. But I think enough. That's way too much talk about the Browns and the Titans here for a DFS show. Let's start to look at the way we're going to break down our cash game lineups. And let's look at our quarterback plays here this week. And Phil, I want to go to you first here. I know you've been on Jacoby Brissett and he's done fantastic. Is that the direction you're feeling here in cash? Or are you looking at a different option?
I think Jacoby Brissett is fine. I mean, I don't see how DraftKings dropped his salary by $100 from last week. He's now at 7 straight games with 20 plus DraftKings points. I get that the Rams are a tough matchup, but and he is bound to have an awful game eventually. But the passing volume has been insane. It's been a month since he's had fewer than 40 pass attempts, and I'm definitely anticipating a big game by the Rams offense. So I don't expect that streak to end. I think Brissett is fine at 5,700. The more I went through it, the more I think I've landed on Josh Allen at 7,700 for obvious reasons. He's playing the Bengals, and I do think that he could get there. Sorry, I got equipment falling on my head here. I think it should be Josh Allen, but the way that I set up this lineup, I really wanted it. So it was a 2v2 that I struggled with, and it was Allen and Josh Jacobs versus Tyrod Taylor and Devon Achane. And Allen and Jacobs definitely project for more points. So I'm kind of pretending I know better than the optimizer here. But I chose Taylor and Achane because I'm really scared of Achane in that Jets matchup. Even if Taylor is flimsy chalk, I just think that Achane has like 40-point upside. And I'd be really afraid to flip the cards over and find out that my opponent's had Achane. So, Tyrod gives you a rushing floor. He's had 45 yards or thereabouts and 8 carries in 2 of 3 starts. He could get the ball downfield. We saw that last week with Mitchell, who should help him. I mean, he at least separates. He's got to catch the passes, which he did last week. But the Miami matchup is also pretty good. Tyler Shuck looked good for fantasy purposes. So that's in his favor, too. It's just tough. If you go that route, just know that Josh Allen could drop that 50 burger on you against the Bengals and completely ruin your Sunday.
I think if you want to go cheap, you go Tyler Shuck. 4,600 4,600 against Tampa Bay. I think they're going to have to throw. He has 23 or more DraftKings points in 2 of his last 3 games. The one that he didn't, he was playing at Atlanta, which is a pretty good secondary. I know they've fallen off in recent weeks, but they're still pretty talented. So, 23.75 against Miami, 29.8 against Carolina. Has somewhat of a rushing upside. I don't mind it.
Yeah, I think that's a good call out. That's what I had on my sheet. I had Josh Allen here and I had Tyler Shuck. So you guys are all over it as usual. Let's look at running backs here. I think it's going to be really tempting not to hit maybe even both sides of this Bengals Buffalo game. I think that looking at it, that feels like the way to attack it to me with Chase Brown, with James Cook. Devin, are you looking at it that same way, or you have other plays that you're looking at for your cash game running backs?
This is where it's hard because James Cook is on a banned list after his Miami performance earlier this season and being outscored by Travion Henderson that week. But I can change. I think the price is too good at 7,800 for Cook. I think it's a silly price when you factor in like he's only 50 yards behind Jonathan Taylor when it comes to the rushing lead. So he's certainly in the competition there. He only has eight rushing touchdowns, but that's okay. It's not the end of the world. Chase Brown is the must start for me. He's been over his last 3 games. He's been outstanding. 5.4 yards per carry. He was at like 3.6, I believe, in his prior 9 games. So he's really starting to pick it up. He's averaging about 19 carries per game over that last 3. So I think it's 6,700 has receiving upside. I think he's a really strong play this week. Probably my favorite. And then like the rest of it's kind of hard because I like the price for Breece Hall at 6,500, but Miami's run defense has been a lot better in recent weeks. They started off the season horrendous, and they have been playing somewhat better. If you do go with Tyler Shuck, you probably can afford Devon Achane in your lineup, and I think the Jets have quit. And especially once they traded Quinnen Williams, and we're seeing what impact he has in Dallas. So, Dallas goes from a team you want to start running backs against to arguably one of the best run defenses in football, so simply because they got Quinnen Williams. So I think if you can afford it, it's like you can spend up here knowing that you're going with Tyler Shuck and go like a Cook, Brown, Achane type of lineup.
So they did get Quillen Williams. They got Demarion Overshawn back. They also added Logan Wilson from the Bengals. They made multiple moves.
Yeah, but Logan Wilson's he got before he got
yes, but what they had before that it's a massive upgrade over what they had.
Quinnen Williams is like the number 2 PFF defensive.
Yes,
he's a all pro level caliber player.
Absolutely. Yeah, Chase Brown, 6 games. He broke the Bengals record for 6 consecutive games with 100 scrimmage yards. So that's he's coming in pretty hot there. So, Phil, what are you looking at here with your running backs? Are you leaning the same direction? Are there other plays that you are identifying?
So Chase Brown didn't make the cut for me, even though I do love Chase Brown. I love the way that he's playing, and I love the matchup this week. Price isn't bad. My problem was that we saw way too much Samaje Perine on Thursday night on Thanksgiving when they played Baltimore. So Perine was back, and Chase lost that 95% snap share that made him an excellent cash game play. So
22 touches. He caught 7 passes.
I hear you. I'm not saying he's a bad play. I'm just saying I think there are a lot of value plays at wide receiver in the mid range, and I definitely want to play Achane at 8,800, and I definitely want to play Cook at 7,800. So that being the case, I don't know that I'm going to have 6,700 to spend on a flex because I'm probably also going to spend up at one of my wide receiver spots. So it's really just a roster construction thing for me. I do think if you're having trouble squeezing Cook and you don't want to go with Brown, I think it's a pretty good spot for Josh Jacobs, even though he was on a little bit of a snap count in his first game back last week, and he wasn't really rolled out as a pass catcher, which was a little troublesome, but he's got a good matchup against the Bears, and I don't know, 6.5 point home favorites for the Packers. I would say that's a good spot for 100 yards and a touchdown.
Something he hasn't done all year. I mean, he's missed he's 70 yards and a touchdown almost consistently, and it's just so frustrating.
Sometimes 2 touchdowns though.
That's when he hits value, and those are the good weeks. But at that point, it's like just bet him to, if you're in a state that you can bet, just like bet him to score 2 touchdowns, and you can get better odds than playing him in cash.
Fair enough.
I don't know. There's so much value at wide receiver that we're going to get into that, like, just play James Cook. Like, it's fine.
Without further ado, then let's look at some of that value at wide receiver for cash games here in DraftKings. Phil, what is the value that you're seeing here, wide receiver? We've been dying all the episode, it seems like, to talk about the wide receivers here.
Man, there's a ton of it. I could probably prattle on and on and on and on, but one that we don't know about yet, but I'm anticipating is Michael Wilson at 5,600. So Marvin Harrison Jr. is probably out. He didn't re-enter last week's game after hurting his foot. He hasn't practiced yet this week, and we saw a couple weeks ago Wilson was basically like peak Antonio Brown without the crazy 2 games that Harris. Over those 2 games, 33 targets, 25 catches, 303 receiving yards, over 61 DraftKings points, and he didn't even catch a touchdown, so it could have been better. And I'm pretty sure at 5,600, if Harrison's out, everyone's going to try to catch that lightning in a bottle again. I do think that the low price quarterback, whether you go Shuck or whether you go Taylor, you can get those 2 high price running backs and still fit Jamar Chase in your lineup at 8,200. And there's ways to do it, even if you play Josh Allen at quarterback, too, to be honest. There's that much wide receiver value on the slate. But Chase is kind of made for these games where fantasy scoring could really snowball. He had 14 targets, looked good in his first game with Burrow back in the lineup. And the Bills have had pretty consistent trouble all season defending the opposition's top wide receiver, going all the way back to week 1. So I think it's a good spot for Chase. And it gets really hard to pick a third guy here because you've got, I don't want to say all the names, but there's so many in that 5K range that you could go with. But if I'm playing Taylor, I think I would definitely play Mitchell because I think Taylor doesn't really get there without Mitchell having a decent game. And, for cash games, it's a little bit scary with him, even at 4,600, because he's got like a real boom bust profile. I'm probably not breaking any news there, but he's out there on over 85% of the snaps in each of the last 2 games. We know he could get open. He is one of the best wide receivers in the game at that very specific skill. Whether or not, again, he could catch the ball once it's thrown to him and he's wide open is like a completely different story. But this Miami matchup isn't one to be scared of for wide receivers. They made Chris Olave and Devon Bailey look pretty good last week, Deebo Samuel the week before that, and the list goes on. So that would be my third receiver, and then my flex is going to be one from this group of Jacoby Myers, Terry McLaurin. You could even throw Christian Watson in there. And if you had to punt the last receiver position, there's some guys down there too. And the one that's really worth keeping an eye on is what happens with Roma Dunze in practice tomorrow, because he hasn't practiced yet this week. That would open up. DJ Moore is very affordable. And I think everybody's dying to play Luther Burden in one format or another. Fantasy players have just been waiting for him to get a full allotment of snaps. So plenty to chew on there at wide receiver.
So I wanted to ask you here, you talk about Tyrod Taylor and Adonai Mitchell. We talked about Tyler Shuck already, and I see Devon Bailey down there at 3,700. And it's almost the same logic play, but it frees up an extra $2,000 to be able to move around your lineup. And is that a onesie, twosie type of a thing that you consider to more flexibility in other places in the lineup, kind of making that same bet on, if Shuck were to get there, Bailey looks like he would be a part of 15 targets over the last 2 weeks.
Yeah, Vele is definitely on my list as cash viable. I think he probably disappears from the game plan if one of those Bears wide receivers opens up for me, because I don't think he's very good. In that first game where he had 7 targets, he didn't do much with it. He does have a great matchup this week. Tampa Bay is a pretty notorious pass funnel, and they've allowed the 6th most schedule adjusted fantasy points to wide receivers over the last 5 games. So I'm with you. I think you definitely, if you're going to play Shuck in if you're going to play Shuck in tournaments, and I guess I'm veering off the road now, you definitely want to double or even maybe triple stack him. So Vele is very much in play this week. But I'm kind of only going there if I have to. He would be part of a Josh Allen cash build at this stage of the game before we know what happens with Chicago.
Good deal. Devin, what do you see on your board here with wide receivers?
I got somebody who's cheaper than Devon Vele. Pat Bryant, Denver Broncos, 3,400. I mean, look, he has 40 yards in 3 straight games, and he's kind of gone just completely under the radar. When he popped in my roster percentage model, I think I have him at like 11%. Anybody who's over 1%, I have to manually add to my model to do tagging and being able to have stats driven to the website. And admittedly, I'm like, who the hell is Pat Bryant? So I clearly have not been paying close enough attention to the Denver Broncos passing game. But I think that at 3,400, he's a guy that certainly is going to be popular. And certainly he was limited in practice on Thursday, so that's something to keep an eye on. But I think he's certainly intriguing. Terry McLaurin is probably my number one guy. What did he have? 14 targets last week? Something ridiculous.
He was on a pitch count. He played just over 50% of the snaps, and he had 14 targets. So
yeah,
pitch
14
count.
targets. Like they've been like begging him to come back, and he finally comes back and has a massive game. Looks like they're getting Jaden Daniels back this week, which would be good. So that's helpful. And I think the price is just simply too good. So he would be my number one. Michael Wilson, I think, is fine. As a number two, Devon Vele is okay. I'm not mad if you're going to play him. I think that's pretty much it. I'm not getting involved with Luther Burton. Like, you guys have fun, which means he's going to go off just like Alec Pierce did last week. But I don't know. I just don't see him ready to pop like some of these other guys.
I think that Tavian Wicks is interesting. $3,900. When I look at conceptually what the Packers, without having Tyler Kraft or Tucker Kraft in that lineup, they kind of lack that short to intermediate guy that can create with the ball in his hands. I think Wicks profile is a little bit like that. We saw the 2-touchdown game, only 6 targets, but 2-touchdown game against the Lions. A lot more involvement there for him. And I think that after we saw, Vele and Mitchell and some of these other players go off on Sunday, I think a little bit of out of sight, out of mind on Wicks, but I think that could be a direction to go to in similar price range, maybe more of a GPP focused play on that one. Tight ends, we finally have Trey McBride probably priced around where he should be, or maybe he's not priced where he should be, but a massive cliff now here with Trey McBride, 8,000 there. Next is Brock Bowers at 6,000. Are you still? We've talked a lot about going Trey McBride in our cash games. Is that still where you're landing to plug him in, or is that price just too prohibitive now?
It's insane. Like, I don't know. I was doing a study on, at least on FanDuel, and which FanDuel has tighter pricing on their tight end than DraftKings does. And like, even if you were to play Travis Kelce or Rob Gronkowski or Jimmy Graham or dating back to Tony Gonzalez, it's never been profitable to consistently play the number one tight end at the high end price. There's too much volatility. Like 1,000 people think like this, and I need to vent for a second. Joey Wright's going to be very mad at me. 1,000 yards is not special. It's 58 yards per game. And people think, oh, he's 1,000-yard receiver. Who cares? And this is a shot at Mike Evans for those that don't know. Like, oh, Mike Evans is 11 straight years or whatever he has of 1,000 yards. Yeah, he stayed healthy because he's bigger than everybody. Congratulations. But 1,000 yards for a tight end, like, it seems like a lot, but you're paying, even 1,100 yards. It's just not enough. There's too much volatility at the tight end position. And yeah, Trey McBride has been on fire, but like 8,200 for Jamar Chase or 8,000 for Trey McBride. It's not even a competition. It's which player has 50 points potential. It's not Trey McBride. It's a 14 catch, 200-yard performance from Jamar Chase, which is like, I know that's the extreme outlier, but McBride has no chance at coming anywhere close to that. So no, I'm not paying $8,000 for a tight end.
I wouldn't either. Phil, what are you looking at for tight ends here, cash games?
Well, Jeff, you're the Bills insider, so you might have to share the scoop on what's going on with their tight ends this week. I know that Dalton Kincaid has been out since week 10. He's had back-to-back limited practices to open the week. Apparently, someone spotted him wearing a knee brace at practice today, which is kind of strange because the injury that he's injury. So who knows? Do you know if Kincaid will be back, or what's your lean?
My lean is that all three tight ends will play, even if Kincaid is back. And I don't know that he will be utilized heavy to the degree that we would hope, especially given, I know I saw a stat yesterday that it was like McBride is tight end 1, and then whoever the tight end playing against the Bengals cumulatively is tight end 2 on the season. So I know that that's definitely a matchup to look and target. I don't have any idea what is going on with this Bills passing attack. I do my target tree breakdown every single week. I look at the top 3 targets for each team. And this week, the top 2 targets for the Bills were Ty Johnson and Dawson Knox. I don't know how you run an NFL football team with having Ty Johnson and Dawson Knox as your top 2 targets on the week. But I mean, they blew the Steelers out in the second half, so I guess that worked. But yeah, I think that Kincaid, I would expect all 3 tight ends to play. I don't know that you're going to get big volume necessarily. That being said, the Bengals are that matchup that we do target, and we know that this could be shootout. Kincaid could find the end zone twice.
Yeah, so I'm not thinking of playing Kincaid. I'm thinking of playing Dawson Knox if there is no Kincaid. I think at 2,800, he's cash viable, and he definitely makes a lot of things work in the lineup.
Just play Gunnar Helm if you're going that cheap.
Yeah, I was going to say, I guess if you're in love with the lineup and you can't get Knox because Kincaid is active, Gunnar Helm would be the other guy that could probably get you 7 to 10 at about the same price. So those were the 2 names on my list. It's definitely a punt week, but for me, I would take my chances on that tight end versus the Bengals. I mean, it's historic what they're doing. It would be even worse if Isaiah Likely hadn't fumbled through the back of the end zone last week. I think they're giving up something like 11 more fantasy points to tight ends than their season average over the last 5, which is nuts.
Gunnar Helm, with his next reception, will set the Titans' rookie record for tight end catches. Do you know who holds the most catches by a rookie tight end in Titans history?
Is it Chig?
It's not Chig. Chig's got the yardage, but it's not Chig. It's Bo Scaife or Bo Scaife. Like,
there's a name.
Yeah, there's the name.
How the hell would we know that?
Exactly. Nobody would.
That's an awful trivia question.
Hey, just saying. All right, let's open up the board. Let's look at GPP. Devin? Yeah, finish your thought.
I didn't get to name a player. I just went on a diatribe against.
Well, I thought, yeah, I didn't. I thought you were telling us not to play any tight ends at all this week.
I would love to do that, but I'm playing Brenton Strange at 3,900 against Indy. Indy's allowed the 4th most fantasy points to opposing tight ends, or allowing 72 yards per game, which is the 2nd most in football. So Strange has 10 or more DraftKings points in 4 of his last 5. I'll take it. Now we can open up the board.
Let's open up the board. Let's look at what we have for GPP plays, quarterbacks. Hit it, Devin. What do you got?
GPP plays for quarterbacks. I think Tyler Shuck is still in play there. I don't know how popular he's going to get. If I just look at my roster percentages right now, I have Tyler Shuck at 2.5%. So People are not going to want to play him for whatever reason, likely because it's New Orleans and like they're not going to get people all that excited about it. I feel like I need to vent again, but I'm not going to. Why is
Do it.
JJ McCarthy 10% rostered? Like
The Washington matchup.
Washington matchup. Worst pass defense in the NFL.
I will say, I don't think JJ McCarthy is going to end up 10%, but I do understand why the projection models would have him there at this stage of the game. It's because if you look at the number one thing that drives percent rostered, people double and triple count the matchup constantly. And even though it's already built into the projection, and I have to believe that's what's going on there with McCarthy because Washington's been so bad against quarterbacks, but he's been so bad, period.
yeah.
And I don't know that the matchup matters.
No, he just looks incapable of playing the position. Matthew Stafford, I think at 6,900, he's going to go a little under the radar because of the weird price. A lot of people are just going to pay up to Josh Allen. But, he had his worst game of the season last week against Carolina, 3 turnovers. And prior to that was the MVP favorite. But certainly a big bounce back week for the Rams in a divisional game is certainly on the table. We've seen Arizona give up big games to opposing quarterbacks from time to time this season. So this game could be a pretty sneaky shootout and a pretty easy one to stack.
Daniels at
I've got
6,000.
Joe Burrow. Oh, I'm sorry.
No worries.
Go ahead, Jeff.
I was gonna say Jane Daniels at 6,000 might be a little bit under the radar with him coming off injury. It was a non-throwing arm, so it wasn't legs or anything like that. So that could be in play for him, and we know the talent that they have at that wide receiver core. Joe Burrow, continue, please.
Yeah, I will say about Daniels that Terry McLaurin being back is definitely a good thing for him because his ceiling has kind of been missing this year, even in the healthy games, because he hasn't had McLaurin. But now that he does, I agree. 6,000 is also the lowest price that we've seen on him all year by far. I will say that Brian Flores and that Minnesota defense has been putting quarterbacks in a blender lately. Poor Sam Darnold last week still hasn't recovered. So it is a tough matchup. But if nobody's going to play him, like I'll take a shot on a 1 or 2% Jaden Daniels. Burrow, yeah. So I think he might creep up a little bit in popularity as we get later in the week because I think everybody's going to be attracted to that 53.5 point total in Buffalo. But more people are going to stack it on the Josh Allen end. I'm expecting Allen to be the most popular quarterback on the slate. But it's probably pure narrative and it's probably BS. So, take this for what it's worth. But doesn't Joe Burrow seem like the kind of guy who came back to make a point? And now that he's playing Josh Allen, who he's constantly compared to, that kind of thing matters to him, even if he didn't have slim playoff chances that he's trying to keep alive. I really feel like this game between Cincy and Buffalo is going to play like a playoff game and really go back and forth. And if you think that it does have that high total that Vegas is calling for, I would rather stack it from Burrow's end because you have the correlation there with Chase especially.
The problem is,
Brissett, we talked.
I think you're in trouble if you play Joe Burrow. I don't know if it's like 34-31. I don't know that there's a scenario where Joe Burrow outscores Josh Allen in that game.
Fair point.
However, if it's a shootout, a huge Josh Allen game. I mean, I suppose Cook could have a big game, but
counterpoint would be that the Burrow Chase stack could outscore Allen plus whatever teammate.
Yeah, I guess I would play Allen Chase in it if I was playing Allen.
Makes sense.
With
That's
all the
actually
value
really
that's out there, I don't
sharp
know that
play.
I just think with the legs, it's like Burrow could have a 350-yard, 3-touchdown game, and if it's a 34-31 performance, like that might not be good enough because I think if you're going to play Joe Burrow, you have to play James Cook because it's a complete hedge against not having Josh Allen.
Mm-hmm. Agree.
Like the only way that Burrow gets there is if this game's a shootout. And then I would play James Cook because you need Buffalo to score, but you can't have Josh Allen score it.
Yep, you've ruined my stack of the week.
There you go.
Given that Cook's target volume is not where we would like it to see relative to his skill set. That being said, I think if it is a shootout, I have a hard time seeing it not being both Allen and Cooks or both Allen and Cook in a potential shootout there for Buffalo. I know it's negative correlation there, but I have just really a hard time seeing this Buffalo offense hitting 30 points without it being both Cook and Allen doing something to get it there.
Right. But I think what we're saying is, like, let's just say 34-31, because I keep throwing that number out. We could do 31-28, whatever the number we want to throw out. Somewhere in that shootout range. If James Cook has 2 touchdowns, that's 2 touchdowns that Josh Allen may not have. Joe Burrow could throw for 4 touchdowns in that scenario. And therefore, like, I feel like the negative correlation works against each other, where I'm not really worried about Chase Brown having a multi-touchdown game.
I would also say that Cook and Allen aren't necessarily negatively correlated. I mean, there was that midseason stretch, right, where Cook went like 4 straight games with 1 total target.
Yeah.
And I think over his last 4, he's seen at least 3 in every one. He did have a long touchdown catch in one of those. And where you beat the Bengals is their linebackers, right? So if they get Cook in space, even with 3 targets, and he catches one of those, like I wouldn't rule out Cook catching a touchdown. And I think in my overall portfolio where I have Josh Allen, I'm going to have Cook in a good number of those lineups. Not writing anything in stone yet, but I think it's a viable stack. Also, I think you try to play that shootout every way that you possibly can, because I do think that's going to lead the slate in scoring by a pretty wide margin.
Well, it's Joe Brady, so maybe you want to stack it with Ty Johnson then with your Josh Allen, because he'll end up leading the team in targets for some reason. No, Elijah Moore is unemployed. I'm pretty certain at this point in time.
After what he did to me in that Buffalo game, like, he deserves to be unemployed.
Is there anybody else that you're seeing as we go through these quarterbacks here that the merit to mention in GPP consideration? I mean, if Lamar Jackson were to sit, would you go to $4,000 Tyler Huntley as an absolute mess, or is that just way off the board?
No, thank you.
I don't blame you.
I don't think it's off the board.
Just joking.
Okay.
Do not do
I was gonna say,
no Titans, no Browns this week. Just stay away. Just no Titans.
Harold Fannon's fine. Gunnar Helm is fine. Everything else is garbage.
Speaking of garbage, let's look at running backs in GPPs. Where are we looking at for our running backs in GPPs? Obviously, we're not doing Quinshad Judkins because we just said that might be garbage. But what do we see all over the board here for running backs, Phil?
Would you be shocked to learn that Quinshad Judkins is the first name on my
Not
list?
at all. I would not be shocked at all to learn that.
So Cleveland is in a pretty unfamiliar spot this week, right? They're 4.5-point home favorites. The team is obviously trying not to put too much on Shedeur Sanders' plate. And they've kind of gotten back to riding Judkins regardless of the game script. Last week's 23 carries in a blowout loss were pretty encouraging, I think, from a usage standpoint. But this game kind of reminds me of like when the Browns were favored earlier in the year when Miami was really struggling, and uh, and Judkins had that 3 touchdown game. The Titans really are that bad. We usually do want workhorse running backs on home favorites. I don't think Judkins could score 3 touchdowns given the overall context of this game. But can he hit 100 and a touchdown? Yes. Can he hit 80 and 2 touchdowns? Yes. So I don't think Judkins is the worst idea there. I think that he's slightly above garbage level for GPPs in that spot. I do like Bucky Irving. I thought his usage was pretty encouraging in his first game back, 17 out of 21 running back carries, despite the team having 2 other pretty good running backs. Only 54% of the snaps. I'd expect that to grow. I'd also expect his role in the passing game to grow. He was involved a lot more as a pass catcher early in the season. The Saints have a pretty good run defense, but it sometimes gets game scripted out of them, like it did last week with Devon Achane having the big game. So I do like the spot with Tampa as a big home favorite, um, either as a standalone or you could use Bucky as the run back stacks that we talked about. And the other one that I've got here, I'm going to go a little bit off the board. This one is super thin, but Michael Carter at 4,400 is the obvious pass catching back in Arizona with Amari DiMercato out of the lineup. We're expecting the Rams to roll up a big score on the Cardinals. Carter quietly has 13 catches and 16 targets over his last 3 games. There will be garbage time.
Are you
which
on
means
drugs?
there will be garbage time. There will be Michael Carter. So if he manages to luck his way into a touchdown, he could absolutely be the guy that separates your tournament lineup at 4,400.
Well,
I
we've
mean, you could
mentioned
have
Michael
given me.
Carter. We've mentioned Ty Johnson. I think we're just missing Bilal Powell, and we'll have all just like the late 2010s crappy Jets running backs all covered. But yeah,
Yeah, next we're gonna say Chris Ivory. Like, what the hell are we doing?
I can't believe it took like 8 years for me to be accused of drug use on the show. That's what so whoever had the over on that one just cashed it.
You could have given me 100 names. I don't even think I have him projected for any roster percentage this week. I have him at
and he's great GPP play. You know, nobody's gonna have him.
0.04%. So no, he wouldn't even make my list.
For the listeners out there, if you hit it with Michael Carter, man, send me a screenshot. We'll figure out a way to celebrate.
Yeah, with a bunch of drugs. Wow. I this is the first time I think on this show I've been speechless. I don't know where to go from here. Okay. I'll make it quick. A lot of the names we've already said. I think Brees Hall's really in a really good spot. I think Derrick Henry is in an okay spot. And then Jonathan Taylor at 9,300. I talked at the top that it's a difficult matchup, and it is. But he's matchup proof, and he certainly has a ceiling that nobody else has. So, if we're talking about 8,800 for Devon Achane, I think you could find a way to get to 9,300. I probably prefer Achane just a little bit more because I think the Jets have quit. But if you wanted to be contrarian, there's a lot of guys who are getting roster percentage on this slate that I have zero interest in. Ashton Genty, RJ Harvey, Bucky Irving a little bit, Kyron Williams, Devin Neal. Like all these guys are going to be around 10 plus percent. Aaron Jones is at like 9. I don't understand. And maybe all of that consolidates to some of these running backs. We see 30-40% for some of them, but there's just a lot of guys I don't have a lot of interest in this week.
Well, on that note, I will say I have mild interest in RJ Harvey at 5,700. I mean, he's getting volume. The efficiency's been horrible. He had 2 touchdowns last week. That kind of made his week. But 5,700, I think, is a decent price tag around there for the guy that should be plus double digit touches in a game. Denver should potentially, I don't know if Denver's offense can run away with anything from what we've seen from Denver's offense, but it could be in play there. I think Ken Walker at 5,600 is interesting going up against Atlanta. I think Atlanta is a team that has quit, and that could be a big spot for Walker. We haven't really seen him put it together in a big game yet, but I mean, I think that could be in play. Chris Rodriguez at 4,700. If you're really going down to the bottom of the barrel, there's a chance he gets into the end zone once or twice. He's the kind of stepped forward as the lead back for the Commanders, who their offense didn't look terrible with Marcus Mariota, and it could look even better with Jane Daniels. But we did mention that Mike Zimmer's, or not Mike Zimmer, the Brian Flores Vikings defense has been pretty strong. Blake Corum at 4,600. If you really wanted to play the talk about a blowout in the Cardinals Rams game, similar price tag as Michael Carter. Wide receivers, Devin, what are your GPP wide receivers?
Let's take a look. I think Jamar Chase is going to be. The question is he get too popular? And as of now, he's only about 20%. So as of now, he's fine. If he starts getting into the 30 to 40 range, I think he's too high. Terry McLaurin's my favorite guy on the slate. I think he's in a really good spot. We talked about that already. Jalen Waddle, 6,800, kind of going under the radar, but he has a pretty big upside. Going up against the Jets, he's a good pivot off of Devon Achane if you wanted to so choose to do that. If Drake London is active, 7,300 is a pretty good price. Going up against Seattle, who has a really good run defense, so I think that Atlanta could struggle to run the ball there. Christian Watson going up against the Bears. This is the team that he tore his ACL against, so could they try to get him a touchdown if they're ahead and just to get the vibes going in Green Bay? It's a bit narrative-y, but I think that that's at least interesting. Pat Bryant, I mentioned at the top. And then I'll throw one other name out there. Gabe Davis, 3,300. I think if you're looking for a Buffalo receiver, you might as well go with the cheap one. We know Khalil Shakir doesn't have upside, at least historically has not. So take Davis and hope for the best.
Gabe Davis is the Michael Carter of wide receivers.
No, he had that one playoff game where he had 7 touchdowns and broke.
We have told people to make a lineup with their money that includes Gabe Davis and Michael Carter here tonight. So new ground has been broken on the Footballguys DFS Show.
He had 58% of snaps last week. What do you want me to do?
You did.
All right, I'll redeem us here by talking about actual good players for a moment. Chris Olave at 6,500. If everybody's going to be excited to play Devon Vele, again, give me the guy that's actually good on the Saints. We mentioned the Tampa Bay matchup earlier. The 6,500 price tag on Olave, I don't think people are going to click him because of all of the value at 5K that we talked about. So he should come in under-owned despite a really strong matchup. Jackson Smith and Jigba at, I believe he's 9,000 this week on DraftKings. I think that's right. Yes, 9,000. Coming off of his first dud, Atlanta was a run funnel for the first half of the season, but now they're just playing pretty bad all around. We saw Adonai Mitchell got to them last week. They've also allowed a ceiling game to Teteroa McMillan recently. Alec Pierce had a big game. So, these are outside wide receivers where JSN's been playing. I think he comes back with a vengeance now that Sam Darnold has moved past that Brian Flores nightmare that he endured last week. If you want to leverage AD Mitchell's popularity, John Mechie at 4,500 is not as sexy, but he's on the field just as much. He still had 8 targets last week. He scored touchdowns in 2 of his last 3. Probably should have had another one last week too. He had a drop that cost him one. So it's one of those classic scenarios. If you look at his percent rostered versus Mitchell's, is Mitchell really 3 times as likely to appear in a first place lineup as Mechie, given what we've seen um, with those guys together these last couple games? I would say absolutely not,
Three times
which makes
zero is
Mechie
still zero.
fair enough. But I think Mechie's a pretty good play in tournaments, just from a game theory perspective. And then if Roma Dunze is out, I don't know exactly what's going to happen. My initial lean is that people will be way too excited to play Luther Burden and leave DJ Moore at 4,800 a little bit underexposed, even though that's the guy who we already know is an awesome NFL wide receiver. And he's actually got a pair of 23 point games on DraftKings to his credit over the last month or so.
If he's
I
out,
like that call out. I was there on Meche, and so that was a good call out there. I think kind of similar logic to what you're saying there with Luther Burden, with so much attention going to Adonai Mitchell, just playing the natural pivot. Chris Godwin at 5,300 has kind of come back, and he had his best game of the season last week. He stepping back into that slot role. That could be a get right spot for Baker Mayfield here with Godwin against the Saints defense that we've talked about it earlier, has been strong against the run. On your point on Jackson Smith and Jigba, the Falcons defense in 5 of the last 6 games, they've allowed a receiver to top 80 yards with a touchdown. So they've, despite AJ Terrell being a good player, they've gotten lit up there. T. Higgins, going to be full practice participant on Thursday, going to be active, a natural pivot up the board, but similar logic to some of these other situations where we've talked about of all the attention going to one way. And then I think seeing Puka Nacua, I got to throw Puka Nacua, I mentioned there at 8,700 as well. It could be a spot for him to end up being the wide receiver 1 on the week. Tight ends. What are we going for? Tight ends, GPPs.
Colson Loveland, if Adunze is out, I think is at least intriguing. Different way to skin the cat. I think Brenton Strange is still a really good play. I talked about Harold Fannin just a tiny bit there. Tyler Warren at 5,000 is the last name I'll throw out there. Jacksonville has been almost as bad as Cincinnati against tight ends this year, allowing the second most fantasy points to opposing tight ends. Warren's been quiet for the last couple weeks, but certainly the talent is there. And if there's a player who has Brock Bowers or Trey McBride upside at a discount, it's Warren for sure.
Yep, I've got the same guys and the same notes, more or less. I've been circling that Jacksonville matchup for tight ends ever since Brock Bowers hung that 45-point game on them a couple weeks ago. So definitely Warren looks really good. Fannin is on my list. He's the only guy that the Browns are throwing the ball to since Sanders took over at quarterback. I also really like watching him play, so that's a fun one too. If you've got red zone on and you see him shedding tacklers after he makes the catch and starts running with it. McBride at 8,000. I mean, like Devin said, point per dollar and upside at 8,000. It's really not there for McBride. But if you're playing Brissett and Wilson, both of those guys have kind of middling salaries. You can still fit McBride, and if he goes for 30 and no other tight end on the slate even gets close, he could still be a reason that you finish with the first place lineup because there is a lot of value on the slate. It's not something that I'm going to like be going heavy on, but I don't know if the field has 5 or 6%, maybe I'll have 10% in my lineups.
Evan Ingram at 3,400. So the Broncos did some weird stuff last week with their rotations because Pat Bryant was trending closer to, he played 70% of the snaps, a season high for him. Troy Franklin played 53% of the snap, his season low. And Franklin is horrible in the run block game. And so Bryant's kind of taken over there. And as an extension of that, they were utilizing Evan Ingram in some of those areas that they had been using Troy Franklin in previously, in a game that they could snowball against a Raiders team that I don't know if they've given up or not, but they're not too far off, I would think. But I think that Evan Ingram could be an interesting play. Let's look at our stacks of the week. Phil, what are you looking for your favorite stack this week?
Yep. So we gave it away earlier when we were talking Bills and Bengals, but I think the Burrow Chase bring back Cook is definitely a good way to play that game. And I actually wasn't aware that Higgins practiced in full, so I would have to see where we end up salary wise once we put Higgins in there. We might be getting up there. But I would definitely consider the Burrow double stack this week as well.
What do you like, Devin?
Stacks. I clearly wasn't listening to you guys. I was off.
It's week 14, everybody.
Yeah. Let's go with Matthew Stafford, Puka Nacua, and Michael Wilson. Just like complete pivot in a game that, I don't know. I think that Buffalo Cincinnati is going to have almost too much ownership. And if there's another game that could shoot out, it could be this Rams Cardinals game. You could put Devontae Adams in there too over Nacua if you can't fit him in, but I think that's a intriguing one.
So I'm gonna go gross. I'll go with Tyler Shuck. I'll go with Devon Vele. I'll take the bait on the bottom feeders here, and then on the backside, I just think this is a really good opportunity for the Buccaneers. Their offense has been struggling, and you can run it back. You can load it up with Bucky Irving, throw Chris Godwin in there as well, and just kind of do a classic NFC garbage shootout that we get. NFC South garbage shootout that we get occasionally, especially this point of the season. Devin, what's your favorite discount play of the week?
The more I've thought about it, like Tyler Shuck isn't a good, like, I think he's probably the favorite. If I can't go him, I'll go give me Pat Bryant. Let's give some love to. He's going to be popular in a GPP. Would I do it? Probably not, just because he's too popular. If he's actually going to be 12 to 15%, but in a cash game setting, I think Pat Bryant's a decent enough play.
All right, so it's week 14, and Devin must finally be getting good at this because he gave away my stack earlier, and he took my cheap value play just now.
I mean, I mentioned Bryant like 17 times on this show. Like, it's not.
Apologies, I wasn't. I must have not been listening either. We could be going in several directions depending on how the injuries break. Right, Burden could be a candidate here.
Just say,
you know what? Let me plant the flag. Michael Carter, 4,400. He's going to get a garbage time touchdown and 5 catches, and the only person that's going to win GPPs this week is me, and the one other guy who's still listening to this show at the 58-minute mark.
Over under on fantasy points 6.1.
For Carter, over, baby.
Good luck.
Bookmark it. 59.04. Michael Carter, over under on fantasy points 6.1.
Gabe Davis versus Michael Carter. Let's go.
Gabe Davis versus Michael Carter. My garbage, Dontavian Wicks. I think Dontavian Wicks at 3,900. The Bears defense has struggled against receivers. I think that this we saw last week. AJ Brown had the number 1 week for wide receivers against this Bears defense. I do think there's something to the kind of looking for the fill in for Kraft, and it's not going to be one of the tight ends. And I think Wicks can bring some things into that game there. So I'll go Dontavian Wicks at 3,900. That's all we got. It's week 14. Devin, send the people out.
Go Titans.